Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest podcast, presented as always by our friends Exterior Home Solution, trusted since 1999, local. If you need a garage maintenance done, siding, roofing, whatever that case may be, give Exterior Home Solutions a call today, 865-524-5888, exteriorhomesolutions.com. I'm Eric Kane alongside Brett Hubbs, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price. A lot to get into today. The regular season has come and gone. Silly season is upon us. We're going to have a transfer portal window opening on December the 4th. You have these COVID seniors. Will they elect to leave? Will they elect to come back? Traditional recruiting 2024 cycle, that's nearing with National Signing Day on December the 20th. And then, of course, Tennessee in the transfer portal, two going and incoming. So it's about to get wild here in this next month. And we're going to kind of lay that out for you all here today on the Volquest podcast. But first, do want to look back at a season-ending win, regular season-ending win, as Tennessee awaits its bowl destination. But it was 48-24 over Vanderbilt. Austin Price, it was a win that Tennessee expected to have. It looked good doing it. And, of course, the star of the show was Joe Milton. But a lot of guys played well there, and a good win to end the regular season at home at Neyland Stadium.
Yeah, a nice solid win, was never in doubt. You took care of business early. You got up 45 to 10, and you led by 5 touchdowns, and then kind of sleptwalk through the end of the game. But with the muff punt and letting them get a couple of cheapies late, but you did what you were supposed to do. Although Joe probably had one of his best games of his Tennessee career. Granted, Vanderbilt's not very good, but he threw it, he ran it, he did a lot of nice things. He continues to bring along the those young sophomore receivers who continue to make a few plays here and there. And, the tight ends continue to be showcased, which, hey, Roger, we say we throw to the tight ends, Roger, come on home to Tennessee. I think that was the message Saturday. And then Tennessee, did enough in the run game. They weren't the best we've seen all season, but they were solid.
Rob, I think something that was neat about this game that we haven't seen an awful lot that's been lacking from the prototypical Josh Heupel offense and what we've seen with this offense the last 2 years was explosive plays. Drive number 1, 56 yards to Ramel Keaton. A couple drives later, 34 yards to Jacob Warren. Later in the second half, 46 yards to Ramel Keaton. All those went for touchdowns. The explosive plays were there, and as Austin pointed out, the run game was good enough, obviously, but Vanderbilt was going to stop Tennessee's run game and force Tennessee to throw to win, and Tennessee certainly did that. And welcome back explosive plays.
Yeah, and welcome back explosive plays in the passing game specifically. Yeah. Because we've seen Jaylen Waddle, I'm sure we're going to talk about it, has made plenty of explosive plays in the ground game. But no, we have not seen that through the air. And I know we've all talked and written about the average yards per attempt has kind of been a red flag, something sort of an indicator stat, I guess, for Joe when he plays well, and when the Tennessee offense is humming, against Kentucky, it would be an example. The first half against Alabama, when the yards per attempt was up closer to 10, and when Tennessee's offense struggles, it's been down around 5, and obviously, this past week he was pushing the ball downfield from early in the game, and I don't know about you guys, but I enjoyed seeing Joe go out like that with hitting some big plays, ringing up the scoreboard, because I've certainly questioned him. I know a lot of people have, and I just thought it was cool for him to have a good final day in Neyland.
Yeah, it was better than good, Brent. It was elite for that one game. He had his best game of his career. Arguably, you and I talked about it on the rewind the other night. Arguably his best throw in a Tennessee uniform, that 10-yard, out and up to McCowan Castle. It's just putting it right on the money, showed incredible touch. But Joe Milton accounted for 6 touchdowns. We've thrown the stat out a million times since the game, but the first time a Tennessee player's done that since Jonathan Crompton against Memphis.
Mountain values, baby. Mountain values.
Back in 2009, Joe Milton was really good. And as Rob said, that was good to see. Final home game at Neyland Stadium. Good to see for Joe Milton to go out like that.
Yeah, listen, Joe has done everything he can for Tennessee. He's not Hendon Hooker. Rob mentioned that in the 3-2-1, but that doesn't mean Joe is just awful and it's horrible quarterback play. He's had some moments where it's not been real good, and then he's had some other moments where it's been good, and then he had a great moment. Everybody wondered when he was going to get a moment, and he had that against Vanderbilt. He played extremely well, got off to the hot start. I think Vanderbilt helped him because they were committed to stopping the run early, and that opened up the middle of the field, and Tennessee got vertical, and Joe started hot, ready to play. So it is good to see. It's good to see. There's a lot of guys in this program who have done a lot, and Joe's a guy who, quite frankly, could have pouted when he lost his job, and he didn't. He could have left. He didn't. He became, he became a guy who helped Hendon Hooker become a better player, the same way Hendon Hooker has helped Joe Milton become a better player. So Joe's been an asset to this program, and it was nice to see him go out. It was nice to see Jacob Warren have a nice day, and a bunch of other senior guys who have been around this program a long time to go out the right way. Against the Vanderbilt team, it's not very good, but Tennessee was fun to watch, right? And nothing felt hard on Saturday offensively. And that's the first time we've seen that in a few weeks, because the last couple of weeks it had just felt really hard for Tennessee to try to make a first down. And that wasn't the case on Saturday. So it felt a little more right.
Well, you knew it was going to be kind of that way anyway, but you kind of got the assurances, however, that it was going to be that way when, it was basically routes on air to Ramel Keaton on the, second play of the game or whatever it was. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you knew it was, we're not in Kansas anymore after the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. And I mentioned this in the 10 things I wrote on Sunday. I mean, I'm not sure what Vanderbilt's defensive structure was there. They had 10 guys in the box, and they left the wide side of the field one-on-one with Ramel Keaton. I mean, that literally is basically routes versus air, because he had so much room to work with there. But give Joe credit. He hit him in stride and got him off to a good start. And listen, it's a Vanderbilt team that wanted to go home, right? I mean, it was, they had a long year. It was very difficult for them. In Tennessee, got started going early, and Vanderbilt mustered a little more than I thought probably they would. And then, as Austin mentioned, you got a couple of cheapies late that were just kind of irrelevant.
Can't really say enough about Joe Milton, his performance in this football game. Again, I mentioned the pass with touch on it to McAllen Castles. Jacob Warren, a guy screaming off the edge, sidestepping, stepping up, keeping his eyes downfield, delivering that ball. The throws to Ramel Keaton, the first one in particular. I mean, it just looks so effortless when you're going back and watching the rewatch and the highlights. But Rob, I guess another final highlight to note from this game. Again, the run game wasn't a huge factor in this one, but after a slow start, meaning he didn't touch the football for the first 6 offensive snaps of the football game, took until Series 3. Jaylen Wright's first 3 carries went for 2 yards. Then he had a strong second quarter, does get past the 1,000-yard marker for his season, and only on 136 carries at the time. He's been phenomenal for Tennessee, but it's a big accomplishment for him. He could have got it way earlier if he got the touches of a true RB1, but a good accomplishment for him, for this offensive line, and really for this program, just something else you can hang your hat on in terms of recruiting.
Yeah, for Jaylen especially, a guy that, I know AP was talking about last spring, that whispers around the program of what kind of a winter he had, what kind of off season he had, the work he was putting in. And, he didn't necessarily end last year as the clear-cut number 1, but boy, it was definitive, in August that he was the clear-cut, number 1 running back in that room. And that's no disrespect to anybody else. And the numbers speak for themselves. Eric, you touched on it with the amount of carries that he had, but I don't want to steal Hubbard's thunder, because I know he spent all day Sunday digging these up, but just a wildly productive day every year for a guy who didn't have a lot of opportunities considering how productive he was.
Well, you're talking about third guy in school history to average over 7 yards a carry in a single season. He's had a great run, and Tennessee fans, Austin, I hope, have appreciated what he's done for Tennessee this year. He became kind of the bell cow for Tennessee while they were finding their way through a passing game. And I hope Tennessee fans have enjoyed it, because he's been fun to watch. I would be surprised if he's back and playing at Tennessee another year, or even in the bowl game. But he was a large chunk of what Tennessee was offensively through the middle part of the season, where Tennessee was trying to find their way in the passing game.
1,000%, not just 100%. 1,000%. I mean, I think it's easy to gloss over kind of how quick his careers went by, because, he arrived, he was recruited during that COVID cycle, and then was kind of, a reserve until this year. And all of a sudden it was like, boom, and he didn't get a ton of carries. And I'd say the rotation probably drove the fans and some of us crazy, just how they rotate him, because you're like, man, I'd love to see this guy get 30 carries and see what he can do. But would he be the same player if he got 30 carries? I mean, maybe not. I mean, I think part of his impact is being able to be super fresh. The big runs that he had near the back end of the season, where he pulled away, not just from a couple of low level opponents, but pulling away from the Georgia secondary. I mean, those are money making runs. And Jaylen, I think really for a kid that doesn't, he kind of always looks like he's mad. You go back to when we met him and his dad Curtis over in North Carolina. He always just kind of looks like he's mad, but he's not. He's a great kid. I mean, I really enjoyed having him on Ball Club Confidential earlier in the year, and this is a kid I think that will only get better. He didn't play a ton in high school, Hubbard. He's not got that many carries in college, and he's just 20. He's 20.
He's healthy too.
He can't even buy a beer yet on his own. And so, like, when you think about that, like, NFL teams are going to salivate. He's young. He doesn't, he's still got a ton of tread on the tires. He's not had very many carries. I mean, he's a perfect guy for the NFL teams to fall in love with, and he's going to test out the roof, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, first of all, he was grumpy that day in North Carolina because you made him run that same drill like 18 times to get the shot you wanted. And
that's not true.
It was windy and rainy that day. I was grumpy because I was cold, freezing, trying to get back to the car, and you wanted the hero shot. But
Curtis and I have similar personalities. We're kind of fun-loving, laugh, and you and Jaylen kind of have.
We're both like, can we go to the car at this point in time? But no, I think, Rob, when you look at him from an NFL perspective and you see where the NFL game is right now, I don't know that he's going to be a super high draft pick because I don't think running backs are. But when you look at his skill set with where offensive football is in the National Football League, it seems like it's got a chance to be a pretty good marriage.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, just people are going to look at his size, I guess, but and I mean, you see, I don't know exactly how tall the kid is for the Chiefs. Pacheco, I know, you look at San Diego, Austin Eckler, and I'm not saying Jaylen Wright's going to be these guys, but physically, there's not, you just can't look at him and say, oh, guys that size aren't making the league, because they are. There's a lot of examples, and I think just with his burst, his explosion, acceleration, just the jitterbug, I think he's going to be a really nice niche player in the NFL and have a nice career.
And color be dumb here. Does anybody think that he's somewhat similar to a guy like DeAndre Swift for the Eagles? Swift's 5'9", 215 pounds, is a guy who's much better going outside than he is running inside, but certainly has a role on a really good team, obviously. And I'm not saying he's DeAndre Swift, but I mean, physically, he's built a lot like DeAndre Swift in a lot of ways. Is he not?
I mean, he's like 5'10" and a half, and about 210, 212.
Yeah,
like
so he's
that.
right there. Yeah, he's right there with him size wise.
I think he's probably more of an inside runner than he is an outside runner. I think he's a little tougher runner than DeAndre Swift. But I mean, I think Swift probably slides and is more shifty than Jaylen is. And just watching them both play.
Something I think he's gotten better at this year is his vision, his patience. I mean, finding the cutback lane, finding the crease, and then, of course, the speed that he's always had. Once you get to the second layer and you break it and you outrun the third layer. And we saw that against Georgia. And so he used to want to just run outside. Josh Hopple's mentioned this several times. He used to just want to be a scat back and get to the perimeter, get to the outside. Last year a little bit, and specifically this year, I think he's looked really good in between the tackles. So his skill set, again, not a whole lot of tread on the tires. He was injured early in his career, battling turf toe. I think it was a hip a little bit last year, AP, where he missed all fall camp. And so, I mean, he was healthy this year. And, of course, you saw the fruits of that labor. That kind of leads us into this next.
His running style, before we go any further, I was looking this up. His running style reminds me more of an Aaron Jones with Green Bay. That's who I would liken him to. And Aaron Jones is 5'9", so James a little taller, but about 210, so similar size.
Kind of leads us into our next conversation, and we got a whole lot to get to here on this show, but frequently asked questions, Instagram stalking, the rumor mill is swirling. It's Dylan Samson. Similar story to last year, right? I mean, Jaylen Waddle, there were some questions about that. This era in college football, teams can get in contact with players through third parties. Will he stay? Won't he stay? Austin Price, I know you put an update on the site, the GQ Sunday night, but Dylan Samson feels like Tennessee knows he's going to be RB1 next year, and we'll make that known.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can't discount anything in this era. Like kids that I think would be 100% locks. They're probably only 85% locks. Like Dylan Sampson's a perfect example. Like, I don't think you can say with 100% certainty that he wouldn't throw himself in the portal, and take a shot. But I think he knows kind of his value here. I think he knows kind of where he stands as far as the pecking order heading into next year. And, I think, right now, providing the Jabari, goes on and so does, Jaylen, you're looking at Dylan Sampson as running back 1 and Cam Selding as 1A, or 1A, 1B, whatever you want to call it. I mean, Dylan Sampson's a guy that, Tennessee loves in the locker room, big locker room leader. He was on the leadership council as a sophomore. The kid is like talking to a 40-year-old when you just have a conversation with him. He's so mature. And I would just be shocked. I think a lot of this is posturing for NIL, and rightfully so. Like, all these other kids do it. I'm not going to hate on the kid for doing it. It's the business you currently are in. So, for my liking, I would be shocked, but not stunned, if Dylan Sampson wasn't back in orange.
I think the whole Instagram, social media stuff is a real slippery slope, and in a way you got to be careful about with your branding if you're a player. And I'm not saying Dylan Sampson's done anything wrong, but those things can get tired after a while, right? Like if you go and you feel like you're worthy of more, then you go have the conversation with the powers that be. I think the whole navigating and creating that rumor out there or whatever, this is the second one this year. Okay. I mean, you had the whole tiger in a cage thing that he did earlier
in the cage,
or whatever in the cage. And now you've done another one. I mean, I think if I were advising a college player, I think you have to be real careful with how much of that stuff that you do, because I don't think it's the best selling point for your brand. If you're airing all that, trying to air something, or you're trying to create leverage through a public forum like that, I don't think you have to do that. And so I think that's where a lot of guys, and not just Dylan Sampson, but I think a lot of guys out there have to be careful, right?
I don't think you have to either, Hubbard. Like, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I don't think you have to either. Like, I don't think you have to do that publicly. I think you could have easily just went to, the powers that be and said, look at my production, look at the other guy's production. NIL needs to be more on par with, what the other guys and not just Tennessee, but other places are getting paid. And it's probably almost always going to get done, right, Hubs? I mean,
well, if you're a good enough player and you've got leverage, they want you back, sure. But I mean, it's the whole, Rob. It's the whole. He took all of his images down of him and his at his school. What does it mean? I think that's a tired deal I think that becomes a real tired deal for everybody really quickly. And I'm just saying some of those guys, you could be better. You would be better served to avoid some of that stuff, in my opinion, because I don't think it ultimately helps you from a popularity standpoint.
I don't either, but I'm very clearly a different generation. I don't know. I don't know how his peers view that. I mean, to me, and I, not just Dylan Sampson, but I think when kids do that, I think it makes them look immature, and I just think they're probably making quick decisions when they're frustrated, about something generally, and usually playing time.
All right, so tracking Dylan Sampson rumors already, and that didn't even take 24 hours till the end of the football game. It's going to be a wild and wacky couple of weeks to come. The portal officially opens on December the 4th. Who will go in from Tennessee? Who will Tennessee try to get from the portal? Needs, some of these COVID seniors, all that and more, plus signing days coming up in a couple of weeks. And there's no better place to follow all the craziness than right here at Volquest.com. Special deal happening right now, limited time, only a couple hours, $1 1 month, 50% off your first year of annual subscription. Follow the silly season with us here at Volquest.com and don't miss a thing. More to come here on the Volquest podcast, but first, a quick word from our friends, title sponsors of the show, Exterior Home Solutions.
It's one of those phone calls that you hate to get from your kids. Hey, Dad, a tree fell on my house. Well, we got that call a couple of weeks back from our daughter at her house here, and the first call that I made was to Exterior Home Solutions. The peace of mind that they gave me and us as a family when they came out here and came up with a plan, got us connected with the right people, is absolutely priceless. Use the same people that I use. In that time of need, Exterior Home Solutions.
As always, thank you to Exterior Home Solutions for being with us here today and helping us make this podcast possible. Let's talk COVID seniors here to get back into the podcast. Those players who have a decision, can they come back? Will they go to the NFL or will they move on in life? Let's start with some injured guys first, all right? And a lot of this is TBD, but let's kind of set the table here. Brent Hubbs, you got wide receiver Brew McCoy, you have linebacker Keenan Peely. Kind of what's the word on two of those guys that would be huge additions back to Tennessee?
Well, I think with Brew McCoy, Austin, it's going to be a twofold thing. One, I think it's very clear he enjoys his time in Knoxville and enjoys his time at Tennessee, has really found comfort and a lot of happiness at Tennessee. He's got great friendships with teammates, and I think he likes the area much better than he even thought he would when he transferred here. This is all going to be about where is he health-wise? How far along is he? Is he going to be close enough to near 100% that he thinks he can help himself working out? Or does he feel like, hey, I've got a quarterback who can get me the ball, and I need another year to help my stock? And you know, because, and I'm not that's not a knock on Joe, but I mean, he's thrown with Nico, right? I mean, it's not like Tennessee's breaking in a guy where everybody on the roster is going, well, they're bringing in a transfer. I don't know if I'm saying, like, he knows who his quarterback would be at Tennessee, which I think is a comfort for him to kind of help his stock. To me, it's all about where that ankle is and where he's at from a physical standpoint over the course of the next 6-7 weeks.
Oh, listen, I mean, Brew had yet to decide on Tennessee when we taped the Nico, interview. Like, he was going to be coming out in the spring. And, I remember, telling Nico at the time, I think Brew may end up at Tennessee. And that was a big thing for Nico. Like, I mean, he clearly really liked Brew and from his time at USC because he was around it, living out there in Long Beach. So I think, getting, potentially Brew here for another year would be big for Nico. Just like I think just having several pieces that could come back, on the offensive side of the ball back helps your young quarterback. So, I mean, I don't think anything's done. I think there's a real chance that Brew could come back, but I think you'll find out, that decision in the next 2 weeks or so. We'll kind of see where it goes. And as for Keenan Peely, we taped this on Monday. And so, like, I do believe that there's a strong chance Keenan Peely comes back for another season on Rocky Top.
Kind of on that same injury front, I don't want to bury the lead here. We'll talk Cooper in a moment, but line of scrimmage, defensive line, offensive line, let's stay on the offensive side. Javonte Spraggins, unfortunate injury there towards the end of the season. I think that you hate to see that, but I think that would almost kind of help Tennessee's chances of maybe getting him back. And then your tackles. I mean, where are your tackles at right now? Dane Davis is going to come back. Gerald Mincy was playing on one leg towards the end of the year. John Campbell missed some time. At this time, it's kind of like wait and see, but what do we think about these offensive linemen not named Cooper Mays?
Well, I think you have to throw Cooper in. I said this on The Nation. I will continue to reiterate this. I get he didn't go through senior day. I think he will be back. I would lean heavily to him being back, but I do not think this is some given, okay? I think a lot of these kids, all the ones you just named, all the defensive linemen you're going to name when we talk about them next, are all going to be dictated by NIL. Like, they want to get paid. Like, and that's where you're at with any old person or older kid, and you're old person, like they're 70, an older kid, experienced kid on a football team across America. They're going to want to get, kind of one last cash in because they don't know what the NFL, like if you're getting back 6th, 7th undrafted free agent, you don't know what your future holds. And so if you choose to come back, you want to get paid. Well, there's only so much money to go around. I mean, like, I think Tennessee, again, is in really good shape from an NIL standpoint. But even then, like, you're talking like big money for a lot of these guys because they think, okay, hey, I need, what it would be like the NFL minimum and, stuff like that. And like, that's kind of, a little bit far-fetched, right, Hubbard?
Oh, well, yeah.
To think you're doing that with, 15 kids because, you got several of them that could come back. So like, I think I look around and I wonder, is there going to be somebody out of this group that could come back? Offensive line, defensive line, not like the John Campbell because he already transferred in, unless he can graduate and can do it again. Or or maybe he was a grad transfer in Miami. I forget. Either way, like, do any of these kids see what happened with Amari McNeil? Amari McNeil, when got his NIL money, he led Colorado in sacks. He was on a 4-8 team. And, Barry Alexander, when got his NIL money from USC, made, near $1 million to win 7 games. Like, winning, like, just isn't that important to some of these kids anymore when they can go get, some money. And so, like, I just wonder, is there somebody amongst this group that does it? And I don't know that there is. I'm just saying, like, I think that's something you have to ponder when you're looking at this group.
Well, I think you have to ponder that. I think the other thing you have to ponder too is are places, schools, collectives, are they in a situation now that we're a couple years into this thing that not everybody can leverage, right? That you call somebody's
Bluff.
that you call somebody's bluff on it, if you will. As I was told a long time ago, if you threaten to leave, you better have a place to land before you threaten to leave your job, because they might tell you to get gone, right? And so I think, are we getting to a point in this cycle, not just at Tennessee, but around the country, where some schools literally tell a good player, a productive player who's asking for a financial, number that doesn't equate, and they say, hey, we can't match it. Good luck. You know what I'm saying? We haven't seen a whole lot of that around the country. Okay. We've seen it some, right? We saw it with the kid from Pittsburgh who went and played at USC, and Bear Alexander did that this year. But you look at it, there's a lot of places where guys have gotten what they've asked for at their current school. Do we get to a point where some people go, no, we're just not going to be able to pay that kind of money. That's just not realistic money. So I think it's becoming a little bit more of a true negotiation thing as we move forward through this around the country. And we'll see what that looks like, not just at Tennessee, but at a lot of places.
And much like the recruiting process, you have third-party, influences that push kids to leave. Yeah, you can do better, man. They don't respect you. You can do better. And then that person puts a kid in a tough spot. He goes somewhere else, and the grass isn't always greener. Like, I see that in recruiting every year. I think you're starting to see that more with the transfer portal, because these kids listen to these influences that, they think they have the kid's best interests at heart, but do they really? And so, like, I think that's a real issue as well across college football.
And then you also, I was going to say, you also hear stories about, whatever the said number was, didn't, at the end of the day, that didn't materialize. I mean, I've heard more. I mean, I'm sure you guys have too, heard multiple instances of, school X promised me this, and, I ended up getting half of it because, how legally binding, we're in a real gray area still. I mean, how legally binding are,
that happened to us here at Volquest. I mean, Paul came to us years ago, said he had a big offer. We kind of bid in on it the first year. He came back the second year, and Hub said, "Get going, Paul. Get going."
I'm telling you, it is. I mean, Eric, when you look at it and all the things we've just talked about over the course of the last 3 or 4 minutes here, it's a challenging time to be a college football coach. Now, listen, they make good money, and I'm not on the deal.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll take that challenge for $9 million.
They're so underpaid because of all the stress they've got to do. I mean, listen. I'm not saying any of them are living a hard life, but man, you're making some pretty quick decisions. And sometimes the decision may be out of your hands to a degree about what your roster looks like going in from one year to the next. I mean, it's a very different world for college coaching right now. You better have a CEO mindset, because if you don't have a CEO mindset, it's going to be a real challenge, I think, to manage things at the big time schools. Now, you got some other places Dave Dorn's going to lose 4 or 5 starters, it looks like, quality players, because they don't have any money. He's out there begging people publicly for money, essentially. You got some places like that, but then the other places where you have some funds, you got some real decisions to make. I mean, you got to be a true CEO. It is not the college football that these guys got into in the coaching business years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing that with the baseball team over there as well. I mean, it's just a feeder program, NC State with Cannon Peebles this offseason, and then Tommy Tanks the year before. So, yeah, you got to have a CEO mindset. I thought the month of June was – I mean, it is. I'm not saying it's not, but I thought the month of June was so taxing on coaches. I was like, man, being around him, seeing how they just haven't had any sleep whatsoever from doing these camps and official visits and all that type of stuff. And I'm like, man, I would not want to do that. Then you throw in December now with everything going on. I mean, you see the best coaches and successful programs around the country, they had that CEO type mindset, and that's what you need, as you mentioned. Talked about the offensive line. We don't have to go specifically and everything. Just throw out some names that could have just. What's up, Austin?
Before we go any further, Hubbard, any word on Jaden Tate at NC State? Is he potentially one of those guys that could be bought away by another school?
I don't know, AP. I don't think so.
Hubb's a shining moment as a journalist.
Go on, continue, Eric. Nobody needs to know. Nobody needs to be reminded of that day where Austin drugged me for whatever. Go ahead, Eric. Continue on. Let's go with the things people care about.
Offensive lineman names were mentioned out there. Of course, the defensive line names that we'll be paying attention to: Amari Thomas, Omar Norman Lott, Bryson Easton, Elijah Simmons, Karot Garland's out of eligibility. Even guys in the secondary that I kind of forget about: Tamari McDonald, Wesley Walker. Those guys, could theoretically come back and play some more. Gabe Jeudy-Lally, Danico Slaughter. I mean, there's just so many. So obviously, a lot to be paying attention to over the next couple of weeks. Let's kind of set. I know we're running towards the end, and we don't have to get super down deep into it because we got to save some content for the rest of the offseason. Portal needs, Rob. Absolute portal needs. Where Tennessee should attack in the portal when it officially opens. I think the conversation starts tight end, offensive line, and then you kind of go from there. But those would be the two biggest for me.
Oh, and the mute button got it.
31 minutes.
Oh,
and I got
30 minutes in, almost made it. But tight end, tight end just jumps out. I mean, when you think about Jacob Ward and McAllen, and everybody, we all think Ethan Davis is a great looking prospect, but he battled injuries and didn't, kind of a wasted freshman year. I'm not saying he still may be great. I'm saying we don't know, and that's also the only other scholarship tight end on your roster, so that's a no brainer. There, the portal stuff we're just talking about with the offensive line could impact your needs, but you got to think adding some tackle bodies is a priority.
Yeah, offensive tackles in the portal going to be the most expensive purchase, NIL wise, that there is out there, with the exception of quarterback, because everybody's looking for an offensive tackle. I think part of the depth of that need on the offensive line for this year in terms of the portal is going to be who out of this group comes back, and that gets back to the challenges of this month. I mean, you're going to need some quick decisions from some guys, this thing can't drag out for 3 weeks or, I'm going to decide around Christmas or first of the year. I mean, that puts you in a tough spot in some decision-making things. So, if you lose all the interior defensive linemen, you're going to need a defensive lineman. In the portal. So some of the portal needs depend on what some of these COVID guys do, which you better have a pretty quick handle on with those guys. There's a lot to get done this week if you're Josh Heupel and Tennessee to try to figure out what's realistic and what's not about those COVID guys coming back.
AP, exit interviews for Josh Heupel players, position coaches, players ongoing right now this week. And then as we wrap things up, kind of set the scene here for the next couple of weeks in recruiting. Signing day 3 weeks away. Coaches will leave, go out and evaluate. In-home visits coming up, and anything big recruiting-wise this week, or at least here at the beginning of the week.
Yeah, you're right. The exit interview started on Monday, and this is a dead week as far as recruiting, and coaches can start getting out on the road on Friday, December 1st. So, where are the coaches December 1st? I think that'll tell you a lot about kind of, where they, are they out in Utah? If they're out in Utah, then I think that tells you a pretty good sign on Roger Saliaponga. They're going to, set up the big end home with Jordan Seaton and his whole family. Tennessee will continue to swing hard at the JUCO defensive lineman. It sounds like Elias Williams is going to stick with Missouri. And, Tennessee's going to need to kind of figure something out on those defensive line. You got all those guys that could come back, but, the last couple of years, Tennessee hadn't signed an abundance of high school defensive linemen, and that's got to kind of get figured out as well.
All right, so a lot happening right here, and there's no better place to follow everything Tennessee football recruiting, transfer portal, COVID seniors, bowl destination. This time next week, we'll know exactly where Tennessee's going and start breaking down that matchup, Tennessee against who, potential bowl opt-outs. So much going on, and you can follow it all at Volquest.com right now. Silly season is upon us. $1 for 1 month, 50% off your first year of annual subscription. That's happening right now. The deal is going to run out later today. So if you're listening, if you're watching, take advantage of this right now so you don't miss a thing over at Volquest.com. Big thanks as always to our presenting sponsors, Exterior Home Solutions. If you need roofing, siding, windows, or a garage, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. They've been local. They've been trusted since 1999. That phone number, 865-524-5888. You can visit them online at the website, exteriorhomesolutions.com. For Austin Price, Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, I am Eric Kane. Thanks so much for listening to us here on the Volquest Podcast.